So I'm still posting these videos. I did it all in a stream of consciousness, which means I'm realizing some stuff I forgot. And one story I do not want to have forgotten, which is my mom doing Madeline. Madeline was a book in a series of books by Ludwig Bemelmans. And most younger people know because it was a television series, like what, in the 90s, in the 2000s? I don't know. I'm old. But originally, it was a cartoon short just for the first book. And my mother tells the story. She did animation. She did cartoon voices. And she was at one of the cartoon places. I don't remember which one. And she was going there for something, and then she looked in an office and saw all the like the storyboards up on the wall, all in a row. And she said, "Oh, what's this?" And then she walked, and underneath it said the dialogue, or it was all narrated. And she started reading it out loud. I think I know it. In an old house in Paris that was covered in vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. In 2 straight lines, they did something. I remembered it. I didn't have to look it up. In 2 straight lines, they ate their bread, they brushed their teeth. No. They said their prayers and went to bed. And then something about they were all very good except for Madeline, who was very naughty. Something like that. But she just sort of walked around and she just read the whole thing out loud. And then from behind her, she heard, "You've got the job." So that is literally the exact true thing of how she got the job to do Madeline. She just read it out loud. And she doesn't, the funny thing is she doesn't have a French accent doing it. She has sort of sounds European, except for when she has to do the voice of Miss Clavel, who is the caretaker. "Something is not right," she would say for Miss Clavel. And it's wonderful. It was nominated for an Oscar. It did not win. You can find Madeline on YouTube, and you can watch it. You can listen to see how my mom sounded in 1951. I don't remember. But anyway, I forgot that story, and it's a good one. Back to me from Friday. So she was a starlet. She did a bunch of movies. She played Napoleon Bonaparte's sister in a movie called Lydia Bailey, and which was a very large role, but the movie was was no hit. But she was great. She did a couple, she did the 2 Hitchcock films, The Man Who Knew Too Much and To Catch a Thief, and she was doing a bunch of other stuff. And then she decided she was going to move to New York. I think she might have decided to move to New York because she was dating an assistant director. She said they would go to the smokehouse, which is right near where I live, and eat in front of the fire. And she loved him. And he did not want to get married. And she said, "If you won't marry me, then we're breaking up." So they did. And then she went, "Fuck this," and moved to New York. She did not say "fuck this," though, because she was my mother. It was the subtext. At that point, she was not living at the Hollywood Studio Club. She was living in a bungalow court, and she had a baby grand piano, and she sold everything, and went to New York to work on Broadway and to do radio there. I don't know if she did a lot of radio in New York, but she did a bunch of theater, including the play she met my dad doing, which was the important part of this story. I believe I've told this story too. I know I've written about it, but she was doing the rounds in New York, and she was walking down the street, and she had to go to the bathroom, and she went into a bar. If you go into a bar and you're going to go to the bathroom, you can't just go to the bathroom. You have to buy a drink. So she bought a drink and said, "I will buy this," and I'm going. And she went to the ladies' room. She came back, sat at the bar next to some guy. They started chatting. He said, "What are you doing here?" she says, I am an actress. And he said, my wife is an agent. And so that was how she got her first agent, Barna Ostertag, who got her, the first audition she got her was a play called Sixth Finger and a Five-Finger Glove, which is where she met my father. So the reason I was born was there was that phone call with a guy who said, are you an actress? And also she had to pee. Those are like the two big reasons. Also, of course, that she didn't marry Monsieur Moosbeck, that they asked her about Monsieur Moosbeck wrong, and that poor Ziggy died. So all these things together, these are like major things that led to her meeting my dad. Six Finger and a Five-Finger Glove was a play that lasted for 1 week on Broadway, though it did very well in the Boston tryout. My dad was the second lead. Jimmy Comack was the lead, the male lead. My mother was the female lead. Also in the play were Frank Campanella and Conrad Bain. And as I reminded myself recently by something I'd written, I'd forgotten about this, that my parents, they all met doing this play. They all later moved to Hollywood, and they all went to the same church. Conrad Bain, Joe Campanella. No, wait, did I say Frank Campanella was in the play? Frank, not Joe. But Frank and his brother Joe, and my parents, and Conrad Bain all went to St. Charles Borromeo, which is where I go now and where I sing in the choir. Anyway, Salome Jens was the only other female character in the show. My mother hated her. They did not get along, and they had to share a dressing room, even though my mother was the female lead, because there was only, there were the only two women in the show. However, by the time they actually opened, she and my dad were having a showmance, and so she shared his dressing room. And so fucking Salome Jens got the female lead star dressing room because she was the only other woman. And my mom climbed the stairs and had a lesser dressing room that she shared with my dad, so she didn't have to share a dressing room with Salome Jens. I'm sure Salome Jens was great, but she and my mom did not get along. Anyway, the play ended. My mom thought that was it with her and my father, who was married, by the way, but separated. And one day she was walking down the street in her neighborhood, and he was walking down the street in her neighborhood, and she said, oh, what are you doing here? And he's like, I came to see you. And that was when she realized, oh, okay. So this didn't end with the show. And it didn't. They met in 1956. They married in 1958. In between 56 and 58, my dad got a Mexican divorce. I've written about it twice. I wrote about that it was a Mexican divorce, and I wrote about that it was a Reno divorce. I don't know which one was right, but I wrote about Mexican first, and I'm sure that was the correct one. And then later on, I remembered it wrong. He got a Mexican divorce. Eventually, though they were living together while he was still married, I found all this out very late. What? People lived together without benefit of clergy in the 1950s? Apparently they did. Certainly they did if they were actors. I suppose it was much less of a big deal if you were an actor, because, of course, actors, actors are actors. When my grandmother came to visit my mother, my father moved to a hotel, and my mother pretended she lived alone. But yes, they lived together. He asked her to marry her over and over, and she's like, why mess up a good thing? This is another thing that surprised me when I found all this out very late. And finally he said to her, let's get married, and we'll get married on your birthday. And she said yes. So today is not just my mother's 100th birthday, it is my parents' 65th anniversary.